Hi everyone, my name is Suzanne and I'm a Chinese metaphysics master in Hong Kong. Today we're going to take a little bit of a longer and more advanced deep dive into what type of properties are not so great for your cash flow, for your money and wealth capacity. So this is a little bit longer and it may require a little bit of an advanced feng shui knowledge, but I'll try to keep it as simple as possible so that even beginners can follow this. So again, this is a little bit of a longer one. And if your property exhibits one or two of these features, don't panic. Yeah, not everything is lost. A lot of things can be fixed. Some can't. But if you have like one of these features in your property or around your property, it doesn't mean that you're going to be forever poor. It just means that maybe you have to try a little bit harder to make money or to fix your cash flow. All right. So let's have a look at what properties can make you poor or let's just say limit your wealth capacity. What kind of features are generally not that great? So the first thing we look at is the clash animal. So what we mean by that is that the front door should not be facing your clash animal. So in order to determine this, the first thing you actually need to do is plot your Bazi chart. So this is a Bazi chart here, and you need to check the year you were born in. So let me just highlight that here so that I can show you. So you look at the year pillar here and what animal sign you've got here. The rest of the Bazi chart you can safely ignore. So this particular person here, born in the ox year. So this person should not be living in a property where the main door is located in the clash animal sector. So what clashes with the ox? That would be a goat. So if the main door is located in the ghost sector, then the wealth capacity is limited for this particular person. Now, if this is the breadwinner, that's obviously not great. If it's the 5-year-old son in the family, then this is not really that much of a problem because he is not working yet and he's not bringing in money. So we are focusing mostly on the breadwinner or one of the breadwinners if both husband and wife are working. So the main door is the focus because the main door is the wealth opening of the house. Yeah. So you do not want to have the main door located in your clash animal sector. Facing is fine, but not in the clash animal sector. So in this particular case, what this would look like is this here. So as we mentioned, this person is born in the ox year. The ox clashes with the goat, and the goat is associated with the southwest one direction. So here we have the main door to the property located in the southwest one sector here. And so the person who is born in the ox year will not really benefit financially from living in this particular property. Now, if you have several doors, then check the one that you use most. Yeah, Feng Shui and Qi, they don't know the difference between a main door and a back door or a balcony door. Qi only recognizes an opening, yeah, not a door. You don't need to check the windows. That's not necessary. You don't necessarily have to check the balcony unless it's a terrace and you enter the house through the terrace frequently. Check specifically the doors. You have a back door or maybe a door that is used by the helpers. If one of these doors is located in your clash animal sector, then this is not ideal. Yeah, so the door controls external opportunities that can come to you. And if this is aligned with your clash animal, then basically these opportunities are being repelled. And without these opportunities, obviously, your earning capacity or your earning power is negatively impacted as well. Now, this is very difficult to fix because unless you can move the door, you can't fix it. Now, if you do have several doors and only one of them is located in your clash animal sector, then just stop using that door and use the other doors. And that goes for everyone in the household, yeah, not just you personally. The door that is clashing with the main breadwinner's year branch should then simply not be used, regardless who it is that is using it, because it should not be activated. All right. So this one is the first feature that can impact your earning capacity. Now, next one, we've got what we call piercing sha. Piercing sha means that qi is flowing too quickly or too fast through the property or within the property. Any place where you can see an entry and an exit point too close to each other or in direct alignment with each other will have a piercing sha problem. So what does this look like? So here, this is very clear. You open the main door and immediately the qi basically rushes through the house and out into the garden or the backyard or whatever through the back door. All qi that enters will just really, really quickly exit, regardless of whether the door is actually open or not. We just don't want this particular alignment. Once the qi enters, you want it to be as slow as possible. You want it to be gentle before it actually flows out again. The proper exiting of the house is not the back door, but rather the lowest point of the house. Yeah. So if you know anything about Feng Shui, qi always flows from the higher point to the lower point. So you want to design the house in such a way that qi actually flows out from the lower point. But that's technicalities, that's more on an advanced level. But anyway, if you have an alignment like this, front door, back door, piercing sha essentially, then the qi retention within the property is really, really very bad. It can also sometimes happen when you have a balcony door immediately opposite the main door, but that only happens if you have nothing in between. So most people have maybe a sofa arrangement between the main door and the balcony door. And so then the problem is solved because then the qi is being stopped from flowing out directly. So that is okay. But in a case like what you see here on the screen, that is really, really quite bad. Now, even in this case, you could add partitions where the qi then essentially has to flow around, and that slows it down. So it is fixable. If you leave it as is, then this is not ideal. Then essentially what this means, opportunities will come to you, but they will disappear quickly. Nothing is sustainable. And even though money comes in, it will quickly dry out. So in a case like this, what you see here on the screen, the only area that actually receives qi is that straight line where the qi flows through. So exactly that line from main door to back door. The rest of the house will not actually have any qi left to take advantage of. So if you're working from home, that's obviously quite bad. Now, the only people who are actually benefiting from a setup like this, because there's nothing is black and white in Feng Shui. Yeah, there's always one person or one group of people who will benefit. So if you have a setup like this and you are a day trader or maybe someone who's involved in money laundering, then this is a good setup because money will come and money will go quickly. Yeah, so there's a quick turnaround. But I reckon that most of us are not in these industries or in these professions, and so therefore we're not going to benefit. So fix this by putting a partition in. Maybe heavy curtains, although that will then make the place very, very dark, but never have like a direct alignment like this. Now, here you can also see a floor plan where this is quite negative. This scenario is actually quite bad because you don't even have a proper open space between the main door and the back door or the balcony here. It's basically just one narrow corridor that then just goes through the living room and out. So the narrow corridor is generally not something that we want to see. It makes the space very, very cramped, and it even accelerates the qi flow. So it becomes even faster and then really, really rushes out. The qi moves faster and becomes more and more aggressive, and this makes it very, very difficult to build up assets. So this person here, or the people, the occupants of this flat, they probably have difficulties saving money. They may always be in a negative balance, or have trouble fulfilling their credit card obligations. So again, you need to redirect the qi flow or block it from flowing out. In this particular case, it's very, very difficult to do. You obviously can't redesign a flat. In a house that may be a little bit easier, but here this is very difficult. So you would have to put a partition within that living room space, making sure that the qi doesn't flow through. All right. So this is what we call piercing sha. Now, the next one is the landform embrace. So for those of you who are familiar with Feng Shui, you know that we want to have a landform embrace around the property. Let's say we're talking about 10-kilometer radius. Yeah, you don't need to have a mountain on the left, right, back, and front in the immediate vicinity. Yeah, nobody has that unless you live in the countryside or somewhere in a mountain valley. But other than that, that's not very realistic. But generally speaking, we want to have sentimental landforms or some elevation around our property. Now, when it comes to city planning, a lot of cities that are prospering over time, they actually do fulfill this criteria. So, for example, look at Singapore, look at Hong Kong, look at Kuala Lumpur. There's like mountains or hills all around the city itself. So that forms a natural embrace. Now, we also obviously want to see this around individual properties, some sort of embrace. And again, we're talking about 10-kilometer radius, and it doesn't have to be a high hill. We look at elevation in general. Do you have any sort of elevation? Even if it's just a small hill, that's okay. Now, here, this is clearly a building that suffers from lack of embrace. A high-rise building with absolutely no support around it is very detrimental because it's exposed to sha qi or negative qi from all over the place, from all around it. And just looking at it, it makes you feel uncomfortable. It's in Hong Kong, we call this the chopstick buildings. Now in Hong Kong, we thankfully do have a lot of natural landforms, so it's not that dangerous or not that detrimental. But in this particular case, you basically see just flat land. And so this makes the qi around this building very, very volatile. It's like building a building on top of a mountain, and there's basically you're at the highest point. There's nothing else around it, so you will be all alone. So this is an issue. Nothing is actually there to protect you. And this means that qi, because it's volatile, the opportunities are also volatile. Money come, money go, right? If there's you may make money, but there may be just one small upset and then you lose everything. So this is really something that you want to avoid. Now, the first building in an area, or the first high-rise building in an area that is just newly developed, will always have these volatility issues. Once other buildings are being built and it's surrounded by other high-rises, then this essentially this will go away, or this will not be that pronounced anymore. Now, if the building, like what you see here, essentially just stands empty, because most of the times when you see a building like this in the middle of nowhere and it's just like one high rise, people are not really drawn to even moving in there. So then it becomes a void. And there's not even any qi there. So you want to avoid this. Try not to move into a building that is just the only high rise in the entire area. If you know that there's other high rises being developed, just wait until the area itself has filled up with buildings and there is an actual embrace there. So once buildings start being built around the first high rise, it becomes more and more stable. So just wait for that. Otherwise, in the first few years, you may really, really suffer from cash flow issues. Now, in a less extreme case, you can look at images like this, right? So where we have one building in a neighborhood that sticks out, that has that's several floors higher than the others. Now, if your building, let's say, is a 5-story building among only 2 or 3-story buildings, then your building brings the entire neighborhood out of balance. So your building is actually making the neighborhood slightly volatile. If you are the smallest building in the neighborhood, then you won't get any opportunities. So try to move into a building that is more or less the same height as everything around you, more or less. Yeah, just look at the context of the neighborhood itself. In a city, obviously, where we have a lot of high rises, not every building is the same height, but more or less look at whether the building is actually in balance or seems to be in harmony with the rest of the neighborhood. Now, next up, we have openings, or rather too many openings. This has to do with how well your house can actually store qi that flows in from the environment. So in order to contain qi, the house has to have clearly defined boundaries. And if there is a building or a property that has just too many openings, or if the openings are too big in relation to the property, then you will have problem with qi retention. So this happens when you have a property that essentially is all glass or all windows. Even though they may not be openings, but it just doesn't seem very stable or very safe. Like everybody seems to be able to look into the building, see exactly what you're doing. And the qi tends to flow out. So it's very difficult to retain qi flow if there are too many openings or if there are too many windows. The activation of qi is also quite difficult because qi needs to be slower in some areas and faster in other areas. But in this case, where the sunlight activates qi all around, qi just becomes way too active. So the qi becomes less stable, there's too much movement, and then you have an issue with cash flow or wealth retention. Yeah, so one glass wall is okay, but if you just have the entire house just all glass, that is a problem. Now, issues can also arise when you have a lot of entry points all over the place. So whether that's like several balconies, several doors, it's not that you shouldn't have several doors, but you should not use all of them all the time. If all the doors are constantly activated, then the qi gets confused. There are different energies at each door based on the flying stars, 8 mansions, purple star astrology. So each door actually is host to different energies. And so you need to have at least one very stable energy signature throughout the entire house. So if you use every single opening the same way or with the same frequency, then the qi within the house becomes quite confused. So for example, when you have a lot of windows and a lot of doors, qi doesn't really know the difference between a door and a window. And if then all the windows are constantly open, the balcony door is always open, and you're using all the doors frequently, then you may have in one area wealth stars activated, but in the other area you may have energies activated that drain your wealth or that lead to high expenses. So it's very, very confused. Make sure that you just have one particular entry point. Now here, here you have even more openings, yeah? It's almost impossible to contain the qi in this particular house, plus the center is missing. So once you open all these sliding doors that are indicated here, it's not even considered a house anymore because there's no, Qi needs to have a container to be contained in and to be tapped into. So if all of these sliding doors are opened, then the tea is just flowing out. It's like a piggy bank with an open bottom, yeah. So that is quite negative. Now, what makes this even more volatile in this particular example is because there's a pool in the center, and that's definitely something you want to avoid. You should only you should have a pool only in design, especially feng shui designed areas, but definitely not in the center. The center needs to be quiet and calm. Yeah. So this is, although probably a lovely house, if you just look at it and walk through it, you probably like it, but from a feng shui perspective, this is not what we want to see. Now, next up, we've got pulling nose sha. So pulling nose sha qi means that the qi flows out of your property at a very, very steep angle. So the qi is pulled out of your house. And when this happens, money doesn't even reach your house. Yeah, the money is kind of ejected from your house. Now, this happens when you have a steep staircase at the main door. So the qi is basically being pushed out rather than being pushed in. So qi is very lazy. Yeah, qi doesn't really want to climb stairs or whatever. And so if you have a steep staircase and your neighbor's main door is on street level, then the qi will rather flow into your neighbor's house than having to go up to your house if you have like so many steps. So when financial opportunities come to you or to your doorstep, basically they suddenly evaporate and never really materialize because they don't quite reach your main door, right? Now, obviously, a lot of us have stairs in front of our main doors, and it's okay, but I would say cap it at 3 to 5 steps. Yeah, so this is sort of like the guideline. If it's anything more than 5 steps, you may have a problem. Again, it's not to say that you're going to go bankrupt, but you're not able to seize all the opportunities that are coming your way. Now, internal staircases also have that problem. So if you have the staircase and the main door directly aligned with each other, like what you see here, then even if your main door is actually at street level and the opportunities come in, the qi that rushes from the staircase just push them back out. And so there's no chance for these opportunities to actually take hold in your life or for you to seize the opportunities. So this is very difficult to fix. Like in this case, you'd have to move the stair or the main door because there's not even enough space to create some sort of a table or sort of like put a cabinet in between or some sort of block that makes sure that the qi doesn't rush out. So this is quite detrimental. Now, this is also something that we don't want to see here. The qi essentially just flows out. Now, if this is not directly at the main door, it's not that bad, but we definitely don't want to see this at the main door. Now, mansions with a grand staircase do not necessarily have this problem because usually in between that staircase and the main door, you have a bright hall. Yeah, so there's like there's a big space in between where qi can actually flow freely, and so it's not being pushed out. If there's a large space between the staircase and the door, then this is not an issue, right? So make sure that you take care of this. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a grand staircase like this, you won't have this issue. So don't worry, because there's usually a bigger space in between the main door and the staircase or the end of the staircase. Now, when it comes to the steepness of the staircase, yeah, as long as it's not too steep, if there's like a gentle gradient, like the bottom picture here, then it's okay. Yeah. But if you have very, very few steps and they're very steep, then that's an issue. So as I mentioned earlier, 3 to 5 steps are okay. But if they're really steep, then again, you have that pulling shatsi. So if you have a few steps, as long as they're gentle, it's fine. Yeah. So this is something that you want to take note of if you're choosing a property to move into. Now, another case of pulling nose qi is if you have a unit at the end of a long corridor. Yeah, at the end of a long corridor. If it's just a corridor that's maybe one flat wide, not a problem. But if this happens, if you have the end unit and there's a long corridor and there's at least 3 to 4 units in between you and the end of the corridor, then you will have a problem because basically that corridor is also sort of like sucking out the qi out of your property. Now, this is very, very difficult to fix. You would have to tilt the door, but even that is not really that desirable. You will still end up in a situation that distorts the qi flow. So make sure that if you choose a unit in an apartment building, that it's not at the end of a very, very long corridor. Yeah, so then you can essentially avoid the problem from the get-go. Now, next up, we've got the kitchen. So we're only concerned with kitchens that are active. So if you never cook in your kitchen, then you don't have to worry about this at all. If you only cook once or twice a week in your kitchen, also it's not a problem. Now in Asia, we have a lot of situations where we have wet kitchens and dry kitchens. So only consider the kitchen that you are using on a frequent basis. Yeah. In Chinese metaphysics, kitchens govern health. And everything that is prepared in the kitchen is infused with the qi that is present in the kitchen. So the proportion of the kitchen is important. So therefore, you kind of have to look at your floor plan and check the proportion of your kitchen in relation to your bedroom. Yeah. So these are the two areas that we're focusing on in this particular section. So basically, what we are concerned with when it comes to the kitchen and wealth is the fact that the kitchen governs absorption or retention, whereas the bedroom governs internal desires. When the bedroom is much larger than the kitchen, then you desire a lot of money, but you don't necessarily have the earning capacity. Yeah, the kitchen represents the earning capacity or the ability to actually absorb wealth. So you may have a lot of desires, but you can't really fulfill them. And so then you may feel unfilled, unfulfilled, you may feel unhappy. So the bigger the bedroom, the bigger the discrepancy between your desires and your actual financial potential. So, your dreams are way bigger than reality. And this can lead to a person who spends a lot more money than they actually make and eventually can lead to bankruptcy. Now, this is even worse if we're talking about a studio apartment. Yeah, in a studio apartment, usually the bedroom, the living room, and the dining room, this is one unit, and the kitchen is very, very small. So then the situation becomes worse because you sleep in the biggest room, you sleep in the biggest area. And in a situation like this, it would actually be better if you don't use the kitchen at all. Just reheat stuff, that's fine, but not actually use it for like full-on cooking adventures. Then you're okay. Then we've got the room ratio within the apartment. That's actually also a feng shui aspect that we look at, and most people don't know about this. But everything in a house is defined as a room. Yeah, the house itself is a big room with lots of several smaller rooms. Yeah. And how you use the rooms is not really that important, but we need to look at the room ratio of your flat or of your house. So some houses have big halls, yeah, especially houses in the old days. When you enter, there's a big hall. It's like the living room or it's like the reception room. And everything that is important is discussed in this particular room. Yeah, the other areas of the house are not really accessed unless you are living there, but by outside visitors, they usually only see this big room. So the bigger your big hall, or nowadays it's a living room, the more important things you have to discuss. Therefore, you will have a lot of important decisions to make. So this kind of measures your societal ranking, of course. If you can afford a big room like this to discuss like important matters, then naturally you're probably making a lot of money, yeah? So the higher your societal ranking, the more opportunities come your way. That is a no-brainer, but this also is reflected in your home. So the living room or the reception hall um, has to do with receiving external opportunities. The bigger this room is, the more external opportunities actually come your way, and you will be able to seize them. So in a house selection process, make sure that the living room is the largest room of the house. The second largest should be the kitchen, and then the master bedroom. Yeah. So in a studio apartment, usually all of these are the same space: living room, bedroom, kitchen. And so this is very confusing for T-flow. So ideally, you have very, very distinct spaces, one for living room, one for bedroom, and one for the kitchen. They should be clearly delineated. And if the proportions are not correct, then the house can make you poor because your desires, your external opportunities, or the ability for you to seize and absorb these opportunities don't match up, right? So you should have a clearly defined bedroom like this. This is not a studio apartment. You see a clearly defined bedroom that is separate from the rest of the house. Now, if your bedroom is too large, then your internal desires are too big and you often overspend or you spend beyond your capacity. Like in this particular case, you have a massive bedroom. The sitting room or the living room is quite small. So obviously, here you probably have a person who spends way more or spends beyond their means. Yeah. Um, Now, also, you should not give your children the biggest room in the house, right? Because then it's going to be your children who spend all your money. So it's fine to give them a big room, but not the biggest room. Now, in this case here on this floor plan, um, the first thing you see when you actually enter the home, so the entrance is maybe a little bit difficult to see. So let me show you. This is actually the main door. And so here you have sort of like a small kitchen. So here the first thing you see is when you enter is a small kitchen. It's much, much smaller than the bedroom. And that means that the capacity or the potential of this person is actually much, much smaller than their desires. And what makes it worse is that the living room also doesn't bring a lot of opportunities because it's smaller than the bedroom. So the proportions here are all off. So this is undesirable. So always make sure that you get the proportion more or less right. It's not always possible, but more or less, yeah? Just make sure that the kitchen is not too small. Yeah, so here, this is fairly okay. Even though the bedroom is really, really big, you still have sort of like an okay space in terms of the living room, especially because the living room here is this is the entrance, and so right here at the entrance you have a bright hall that can actually capture sort of capture opportunities. Yeah, so this is quite okay. All right. Now, the next one is something that may not always be super obvious, but it's the smell of a house. Yeah, and specifically, we're talking about sort of like a damp smell, mildew, or rotten water smell. So if you walk into a property that maybe hasn't been inhabited for quite some time, you often smell some mold, mildew, whatever. This means that there is trapped water somewhere in the house. And water is an indicator of money. So when there's leaking water or trapped water, you will find that you'll be losing money It will leak out of your life. So you definitely don't want that. So always take note of the smell. It also means that the airflow in the house is not great. So the qi is not actually circulating properly. Um, the smell itself is not the problem, right? The smell itself is not the feng shui problem. It's the root cause of the smell that is the problem. So this is very, very challenging to fix because you need to first identify where the water is actually trapped, where the leak is happening or occurring. And if that's somewhere in the internal walls, very, very difficult to fix. So this is better to just avoid from the get-go, because it will make it really, really difficult to save money in this property. Um, you can't just fix the smell issue. You need to fix the water issue. Yeah. Now, here, as you can see in the ceiling somewhere, there's obviously a trapped water. There's obviously a leak. You would have to remove the entire ceiling or do something about this. So if you're just renting, this is a massive issue. Yeah. If you are buying the property and you're going to renovate anyway, you may be able to fix this. But don't move into a flat like this, just renting it, because this will be causing you a lot of wealth problems. Airflow generally is very, very important. So the moment qi or air becomes stagnant, wealth problems start cropping up. So ideally open the windows of the house at least once a day. Best in the morning so that, like you just air it through. So that is very, very important, generally speaking. Now, this one is an obvious one, clutter. Yeah, so everybody knows that clutter obstructs your qi flow. So it affects the capacity of the qi in your house. So it's basically the general physics displacement theory. The more stuff you have in the house, the less room you have for qi to flow. Now, how much qi your house can collect depends on how much clutter you have. If you have excellent qi potential in the area, but your house is really cluttered, then the outside qi or the outside energy will not help you because you can't even attract it in your house. And even if it comes into your house, it's just going to die instantly because there's no flow. Yeah, so this is really bad. Um, it's less severe in multi-story homes because you have more space from the get-go. But in small houses and people who just collect everything, that's really detrimental, and you will not actually be able um, to get opportunities. And clutter very often leads to a scarcity mindset. Yeah, it's people who cannot throw things away. Yeah, they cannot let go of things because, oh, what, like if I give this away, then I'm actually losing something. And so this is a scarcity mindset that sinks in. Now, clutter doesn't just happen inside, it can also happen outside your home. So if you have outside clutter like this, then it blocks outside opportunities from coming in. Yeah. There might be a lot of space outside. You might even have a lovely bright hall outside. But you block this qi from coming in by piling up trash and clutter. And so you won't get these opportunity. Temporary clutter is fine. So if you're doing a yard sale, that's okay. For a weekend or so, that won't cause any issues, but you don't want to have this long term. You also, so when it comes to internal clutter, you want to observe where the clutter actually appears. Yeah. So if you have a cluttered kitchen, then that's really, really bad for your health. If you have a cluttered living room, that's generally negative for family harmony. And in the bedroom, if you have a lot of clutter in the bedroom, there's no capacity for relationship. Around the entrance, main door area, there won't be any capacity for wealth. Yeah. So take note of where the clutter actually appears and then fix it. And then lastly, we have the topic of plants. So first of all, there's no such thing as money plants. Yeah, they just doesn't exist. There are no money plants, there are no money trees. This is just a total scam. Also, cacti are not bad plants. Yeah, the function of a plant is to redirect qi flow. If you can create an artificial embrace with plants, that is excellent. Cacti and roses, yes, they have thorns, but they don't redirect qi flow. They don't direct negative qi towards you. You do not have to be afraid of a cactus or of a rose bush or whatever. Yeah, so please just get rid of that notion that there are bad plants and there are good plants. It just does not exist. Now, from a feng shui perspective, we do prefer leafy plants, but on a large scale, that becomes quite difficult. Yeah. It's if you have a small apartment and a massive leafy plant, then, the space may actually then um, look cluttered very, very quickly. So if you have too many plants or the plants are too big, your space becomes too yin, meaning it becomes too dark. The plants, it's not the plant's fault. Yeah, it's not that the plant is bad. Yeah, you're just choosing the plant that is not the right size for your space. So that is the problem. So as you can see here, lovely plants. This is obviously a person who really likes plants. However, the sunlight is severely restricted, so the house becomes too yin. And when the house becomes too yin, your earning capacity will go down because money and earning capacities and wealth energies need yang energy, right? So your earning capacity or the yang qi will slow down. And too many plants in your house will also make it a little bit damp and it could start to smell. So moisture gets trapped and that creates stagnancy. And again, wealth will decrease. And then lastly, in a place like this, if you have an entire external wall covered in creeper plants, that's really undesirable because basically the plant redirects or repels the qi from even coming to the house. And the creeper plants, obviously, they have to latch onto the house. They have to make sure that they stick to the house. And this forms tiny, tiny imperceptible cracks through which the qi is actually leaking. So this can just then result in a lot of cash outflow, again, undesirable. So it can make people in the house somewhat sluggish. They don't have any ambitions anymore. And that, does not really bode well for someone who needs to make money and needs to rise the career ladder. If you only have one side of the house covered in creeper plants, then check which gua is affected. This will tell you which person in the household or which family member is most affected or becomes most sluggish in the house. All right. So this was a little bit of an excursion into feng shui features that could impact your cash flow or your wealth capacity negatively. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other things as well that come into play, but these are the most obvious ones that we can all identify, even if we're not feng shui masters. I hope you got a little bit of an idea. And again, don't get too scared. If you have one or two of these features, some are fairly easy to rectify, but it doesn't mean that you're going to go broke or bankrupt. It may just mean that you have to work a little bit harder to make money, and then you move into a place that is better. So hopefully this helped you guys identify some of the most obvious issues, and especially if you're looking for a new place to move into, watch out for these issues. And yeah, let me know how you like this in the comment section below. If you're interested to actually get a feng shui audit from me, then please get in touch. I can also do this remotely, so there's no issue there, regardless of where you're located in the world. Get in touch with me. My email address is in the description to the video. And in the meantime, please give me a like for this video, share it with anybody who may be interested, and please subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys soon.